Welcome to Tech at the Table, where innovation meets conversation. Ideas are always on the menu. I'm your host, Roy Rittaller, and today I'm sitting down with Steve Evans. Steve, welcome.
Nice to be here.
I'm glad you're here. We haven't talked in a while. It's been a whole new year has happened. So happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Can we still
So
say
tell
that on the 14th? Aren't we past
no,
the
you have till exactly the 15th. We have one more day, and then
good to
on
know?
Friday it becomes obsolete. Can't do it. So that's my rule anyway. But what can I say? The world's changing. We know. I don't know. There are no rules. Okay. Well, tell everybody a little bit about you. Welcome to Tech at the Table. Tell everyone a little bit about you, your background, where you come from. Who you are. Who you are.
Yeah. I'm an engineering leader. Most recently, I spent the last 8 years at Chegg. Chegg's a ed tech that helps college students learn.
Yep.
Um, Big AWS shop. Most famous for tremendous growth. In my 8 years, grew first 4 years grew 3x. Revenue grew 3x. And then, as I like to say, Sam Altman got on a stage and opened his big fat mouth. Um,
Yeah.
and our story, technologists are pretty familiar with the Stack Overflow story and the
Hmm.
disruption that happened to Stack Overflow. And Chegg's story is pretty similar. Um, uh, our Chegg's uh, cash cow was highly disrupted by generative AI, um, and had a lot of challenges, um, financially, product market fit, etc. Post the Chat GPT era,
Oh
which,
yeah.
by the way, was only 3 years and 6 weeks ago, roughly,
Yeah. It hasn't been
which
that
is
long.
pretty wild to think about.
Yeah.
It
I
feels
know.
like it's been about 30, at least for me.
Yeah. It's probably shortening up the time we have to say Happy New Year, right? Like it's probably you get 3 days now instead of
Yeah,
2 weeks.
exactly,
Yeah, no, I know what
exactly.
you mean. It was just yesterday that this all changed, and that's a whole other topic. We could spend way more than the next half hour
Yeah,
talking about that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you're here today. You've been a customer of Flexera's over the years, right? In that role, what are you doing now? What are you working on now?
Right now, I'm between gigs. I'm just kind of having a lot of really interesting conversations with folks, doing some advising work, doing some coaching work, thinking
Cool.
about what's next. This was, I've been telling folks, this is my first holiday break that I did not have an inbox to come back to since I was about, well,
God.
ever. I think that the last time this would have happened, I was about 14 years old, so didn't really count.
It's like a dream
Um,
I had once. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it was
that's
a
amazing.
whole new
You should
a
write
whole new
something about this.
experience.
You should write so you got to write something about this. Nobody
Yeah,
gets to do it.
no, it
God bless.
it was it really puts your whole life in perspective. It's been a really look, my 8 years at Czech, I learned a ton on the way up. When we talked about the growth years,
Yeah.
I learned a ton in the challenge. I learned way more in the challenging years.
Yeah, of course.
Um, but in the I left Chegg in early November. It was just time. I'd
Hmm.
I did what I needed to do, and it was time to go. And the last, I guess, 2.5 months now, I learned a whole new set of lessons about myself, which we could spend a whole nother hour on.
That's
But
another
that's a
episode. Okay, we're
that's
gonna
a
keep
different
going.
episode. It's probably a whole
We could
different
just have.
podcast.
We're just gonna
That's an
do
Oprah
conversations
episode.
with Steve, right? We'll just do those once every couple of months, and we'll just see how.
We'll do a
So,
you can do a spin-off.
conversations with Steve. I love that. Inside Steve's brain. Okay. Um, So we're here to talk about FinOps, I think, right? What we
Yeah,
prepped was to talk about FinOps and lessons learned. So I've got some engineering in my background. I try to hide it as much as possible, but I have engineering in my background.
yeah.
Um, so talk to me about what, not specifically, what happened in your last gig, but what'd you learn about FinOps and what do you think about it? What's your, going into this new thing, going into the new year, what are you thinking about the state of FinOps right now? Where do you think we're at? State of play.
Yeah, so I find FinOps to be really an interesting topic
Yep.
because
Sure.
I think there's the practical side of FinOps, and then there's the what I refer to as the academic side.
Okay.
And um, I mean no disrespect to anyone, but I sometimes get concerned on the academic side that it gets a little too academic-y, if you will,
Yeah.
and we lose ourselves in the academics of FinOps and the practical matters of what actually matters to a business.
Okay, so when you mean academics, I think ivory tower, I think clock tower and a beautiful campus. I think of a bunch of people who aren't connected. Okay, I'm not sure FinOps. What do you mean by academic? Like, what do you?
I mean what we talk about at the conferences, what we talk about in the
Okay,
white papers, what we talk about versus what when the rubber meets the road inside of the business. Are we actually moving the needles that matter to the actual business
okay,
or to the metrics that matter purely to the FinOps movement, to the FinOps community? And I
okay. I got it.
think we got
Fast.
to be careful because
Hmm.
and I've got some analogies to other technology movements where I think as technologists sometimes we get really caught up on how important technology movements are,
Hmm.
and
We
if they're
love to.
not closely aligned with business outcomes, we're now serving technology for technology's sakes as
Yeah.
opposed to serving the business. And
Okay.
one of my phrases that my team is sick and tired of hearing me say is, "This is not IT summer camp. We're here to serve a business."
Give me an example. Give me like a tangible, don't, nothing confidential, but like abstract
Yeah.
it a bit, but make it real. My experience on serving the business or business services, I've done a lot of time in that world. And that's also its own abstraction, right? Because like actually doing what the business needs and driving tech into that or having tech serve that, that's actually really hard, right? You have to
Yeah.
be at a detailed level. Okay, so tell me what that means
Let,
to
let,
you.
let me give you a tangible example.
Yeah, okay, good.
Most every company out there spends between 4 to 8 times more on engineers than on their cloud provider.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you're talking
But
about labor, the people themselves, like people, the offices, the
salary and
laptop,
benefits,
all the stuff.
yeah,
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
salary, basically the humans that are writing the code, running the servers, the technology team, they're on average for every $1 million you spend on let's just simplify it to your AWS bill, you're
Hmm.
spending $4 to $8 million on the engineers. But how often when we think about FinOps, are we saying, oh, I can I can reduce AWS by 10%.
Hmm.
Now, if I can reduce AWS by 10% and have zero impact to the engineers, amazing. Let's
That's
do it.
great. Yep. Yep.
But what if I could increase AWS by 10% and decrease my salary and benefits, my engineering costs by 10%, or increase the productivity of my engineers by 10%?
Yeah, that's probably a better example. Yeah. Okay.
Either way, right?
Hmm.
Like, as I would say, when my finance team came to me and said, we need $1 million out of the AWS bill, I would say, what if we add 1 million, but we need to hire 2 million less of engineers next year? They would say, can you add two? Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's that holistic view that's really, really important to drive the business outcomes we're looking for.
Okay, let's drive into a bit. So let's take that equation, right? I'm going to add 1 million in cloud spend, and I'm going to cut my future hiring, which is growing, right? I'm growing on the engineering
Mm.
side. I'm going to need less engineers to accomplish the same.
Yeah.
What There's also the revenue implication of that, right? Like the
Hmm.
engineers, I mean, in your scenario, I'm assuming the engineers are driving revenue, right? Like they're actually creating
Hopefully.
services that go to customers and yeah, hopefully, right? Let's
Yeah.
assume that. But
Yeah.
let's make the assumption, right? They're not just twiddling their thumbs. So what you're saying is basically there's a trade-off here between the cost side that FinOps is driving, both there's the infrastructure cost, there's the tech cost, there's the people cost, and then there's also the revenue on the other side, right? Like there's these
Hmm.
three different variables you got to play with. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality is that it all depends. It
Mhm.
depends where you're at as a business. I like to talk in extremes because when you talk in the extremes, then you can kind of bring it back into the realities, right?
Okay. Yep.
So let's say you have a business that has massive growth. So let's pretend you're an OpenAI, you're a Claude, you're a Cursor, etc.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And you're struggling to stay in front of the growth.
Hmm.
How much energy do you want to put into optimizing your cloud spend right now? I would argue almost none, because every minute you spend showing up to an engineering team saying, we need to optimize how you're leveraging infrastructure is taking away from that time they should be spending getting in front of
Hmm.
whatever it is that is keeping the them us open AI in this example from growing, whether it's
Yep.
that feature, whether just pure capacity, et
Hmm.
cetera, right? And the OpEx um, non-optimization you can fix later. You
Hmm.
can't
Yeah.
capture that revenue, that non-captured revenue later, right?
Hmm.
And so, but too often in the FinOps community, we talk about needing to optimize cloud spend
Sure.
without that holistic view of what is the current business risks. Current
Hmm.
business risk for an open AI, for a Cursor, et cetera, is not having the capacity to take on the additional 10 million customers next month.
Yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
only thing we should be solving for right now if you're OpenAI, right? I
Okay. So
actually
that's one class. So you got the hyper growers. In fact, we've got
that's
some guests on.
the one extreme, right?
Yep.
Just a
That's one
quick
side.
aside, I know a vendor that was a Cursor was a customers of theirs. They almost
Hmm.
got shut off because they weren't paying the bill. They 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 actually called like one of their VCs and they're like, "We'll pay the bill, don't worry." It was literally
Yeah.
10 people running Cursor as they're
They've
like
moved. Yeah.
massively
Yeah.
scaling, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
think about that. Oh, we should optimize our spend right now? No, they're just trying to stay in front of their growth. Like that's the massive extreme, right?
Yeah,
Now
but they're
let's
the
go to the
revenue, they're the growth revenue optimizers, right? They're going after growth. They're going after real estate. They're going after share. Cost is
yeah,
secondary,
yeah.
maybe even
Now,
tertiary,
now
right?
imagine that scenario. You got a FinOps person that shows up and says, "I've got a goal to decrease cloud spend by 4%." Makes no sense, right?
Well, it's an
That's
interesting
not
discussion.
connected to the business goals.
Totally. Okay. So what's go to the other
Other
extreme,
side of
the
the
next
equation,
extremes. What's the other extreme?
you've got a flat or declining business.
Hmm.
You've got people in the break room knocking bagels out of each other's hands. You already had one today. We can't afford for you to have another one, right?
No cream cheese for you. No cream cheese for
Right.
you.
Right. No,
Yeah.
you too much cream cheese. You've had 2 days worth of cream cheese on your bagel there. You need to be more, save up your cream cheese for the week, right?
That's right. We only have so much.
Completely different set
Yeah.
of optimizations you're in. Now you're in the scenario of, okay, yeah, no, I understand. From an engineering perspective, it's more efficient to architect it this way.
Hmm.
But from a OpEx perspective, it'd be more efficient this way. Now, what makes more sense for the business?
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to reduce OpEx, right? FinOps reminds me a lot of DevOps.
Tell me.
DevOps was all about bringing together, you know, to really remember DevOps, you pretty much have to rewind the clock almost 20 years now.
Hmm.
And this was back when developers and back then they were called server administrators.
Hmm.
Really, they
Yeah.
were like
Sysadmins. Yeah.
completely two different teams that barely talked to each other.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
developers would write things and they give them to the server team and to deploy them. And then they were,
Mhm.
they barely talked.
Yep.
And DevOps was all about bringing those worlds together. And the world's barely recognizable,
Yeah.
as over the course of this time.
Hmm.
But in the early day of, especially in the early days of DevOps, DevOps was very much about, um, in practice, was very much what you would see is um, developers just trying to do ops,
Yeah,
not a
for sure.
holistic view of this.
The developers took it over. Developers were the guys that reached into
No,
operations. They
it
controlled their
wasn't a
deploys. They did all of that. Yeah,
collaborative sense. It wasn't a how do
yeah.
we up level this? How do we be holistic about this?
Hmm.
Um how do we do a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario?
Yeah,
It was I've got an agenda. I want to deploy my stuff more.
yeah.
I want to move faster. And there was a lot of bad stuff that came along with
Hmm.
that, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
FinOps has some of that same piece. Cloud came along, a lot of usage-based billing came along,
Hmm.
and oh my, like we need to control this. Totally see where this came from, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Especially finance team saying, like I've got this bill that changes every month. I don't know why it changes every month, and when I go ask people why it changed every month, they kind of look at me like, I don't know, but I'm busy, so stop talking to me.
Hmm.
And
I got stuff to
so amongst all this, a lot of arguments between CFOs and CIOs and CTOs, this FinOps thing came out of it.
do. Hmm.
But it's very finance focused.
It is.
FinOps at its best is fin and ops, not
Hmm.
finance. Oh, and then a little bit of ops.
Yeah.
I you know I heard a conversation one time around uh, engineering productivity, and it was like, oh, we stopped measuring that because it got too hard. And it's like,
Hmm.
to me, FinOps, it's the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
how do we leverage technology to produce business outcomes in a financially sustainable way? And depending on where your business is moving, what is the levers that matter today?
Hmm.
Am I going for revenue? Am I going for margin? Am I going for OpEx reduction? Like I'm going to be pushing that in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And I think FinOps is selling itself short when it stops at the what can I do to reduce the bottom line?
I think this is, I wish we're going to go back for everybody who's listening to this, go back a few minutes or even seconds and listen to like this whole idea of putting the lens on business outcome as opposed to financial cost or even infrastructure cost or cost reduction of cloud infrastructure makes a massive amount of sense. And you're going to have different phases. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I want you to either argue with me or, we'll collaborate around
Don't
this.
stress, I
But there are
will.
different phases in a company, right? And let's, the
Mm.
magic number of three. There's the one extreme where they're fighting over bagels. There's the other extreme where they're just trying to get in front of growth. And there's this middle ground where every trade-off actually matters. Features
And
matter.
the reality
There's
is
revenue,
almost every
P&L
company is
matters.
somewhere in between those two. Yeah.
So that I see that, yeah, that could be. So do you, when you look out, do you see the industry changing around this? Like, do you think it's happening, or do you think that there's roadblocks that's keeping it from happening?
Well, look, I think the reality is going back to this idea of the AWS bill.
Yeah,
The AWS Azure, Google
the
Cloud,
bill.
I guess
Yeah,
Oracle Cloud for a few people.
there.
Um,
Yeah, it's
look,
there, babe.
it's a very big, tangible thing to see.
Yeah.
It's a bill that shows up in finance every month, and it's very easy to point at, and it changes. And so it makes people with three-letter titles that have a lot of power in companies uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
so I get why it gets a lot of attention. So it's very easy and comfortable for for FinOps to focus on.
On that, it's a thing. Yeah, it's a
Just
very.
because it's easy, just because it makes you popular with finance, does not mean it's the right thing to do. That's my argument. is that
It's very fair.
if you
You know,
want to
don't you
up
think?
level, if you want to up level your FinOps practice, go beyond the most obvious thing, which is how do I reduce my OpEx, my cloud OpEx? I'm not
Yeah,
saying you should ignore it because it does matter. Look,
of course.
if I can get a savings plan, if I can put a life cycle bucket on an S3 policy, if I can just start wiping away waste, 100% do it. I am in no way saying shouldn't. Even in the OpenAI example, right?
Hmm.
I'm saying stack on top of that next level of intelligence. That's where you go from good to great.
I love this. Like I'm thinking, I'm a big two by two, three by three kind of thinker. Like I think of these, you can think of but I can think of a three by three maturity model here. Like what you're making me
Mm,
think is I've got these three phases of growth, bagels, growth, and the one in between where I'm moving forward, profitable growth, we'll say. And then on the vertical axis, you can say, well, I have different types of metrics that I care about. At some level, I care a lot about OpEx and cost. At some
hmm
level, I care about balanced, I care about growth and revenue share. And at another level, I care about P&L and like
Yeah,
incremental. And you
yeah.
could plot your way through that three by three.
And by the way, in a company of any size, you'll have different areas of the company that care about different parts of that.
Right. You have a portfolio, right? You have a portfolio.
You'll have a legacy
Right.
business, you'll have a growth
Hmm.
business,
Hmm.
you'll have an R&D experimental area. Um, and by the way, uh, so at Chegg in 2020, we grew 57% that year.
Okay.
We were having our not open AI moment, but a smaller version of that. We were just trying to stay in front of the growth we were experiencing. And I was getting reports and I was seeing a lot of this waste. I was seeing this S3 bucket is stupid expensive for what it is.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to distract the teams
I'm
be,
going after
because
57%.
we've got this revenue we're going after
Yeah.
instead, right? I went and hired. So it's 2020. It's the pandemic. Um, One of my favorite, best employees. He and I started at my previous company on the same day. He was the intern. Turns out he has a master's in music from UCLA, but he was hungry,
Cool.
so he got a computer certificate from a community college, and then he was the intern. I slacked him and I said, "I need your best musician friend. I need your most organized musician friend." This guy had no technical skill set to speak of. We hired him as a contractor. We taught him how to apply lifecycle bucket policies to S3 buckets. Then we
Uh-huh.
taught him how to do RDS right. Like we just taught him some very rote things.
Hmm.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but in the course of 3 or 4 months, this guy was saving us, it was something like $1.5 million a month. Just
Amazing.
as he went through and just did cut
Just
out
did
this
it.
waste without distracting the larger organization going after the revenue. So those
It's beautiful.
opportunities are still there. You go after them, but you do it in a way that's not distracting from the revenue.
Yeah, you keep your eyes on the prize. You do it
Right.
you do it in a way that's not disruptive, especially if
Yeah.
you're in that heavy growth mode.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I
then,
think this is a big idea, man. Like, I mean, I know that others have talked about this, and I know that in the FinOps community, this does get touched on. But see, my take on this, and you tell me if I'm wrong, AI brings this stuff to the forefront too. Like not just
oh, sure.
AI. I mean, because AI is not, it has massive revenue implications, but it has massive cost implications too. And the costs are sometimes not, they're not as linear as they were in the past, right? They're not the same thing as deploying a workload on a server. So I
I,
think if you're not, my take is you have to get to great in order to anticipate these AI workloads in a meaningful way.
I mean, that usage thing with AWS, AI is now
Yeah.
amplifying that, and AI is moving so fast. You know, we adopted the cloud at scale. I mean, we as an industry over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, it's true.
Like it was really in the 2010s as an industry we truly adopted the cloud.
That's good.
We've adopted AI at scale in 3 years and 6 weeks.
Yeah. And from start. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And we really don't have the guardrails, the infrastructure, the visibility. Like we're really behind the eight ball on this. And so the the people with the three-letter title that has a lot of power in the C-suite is getting like has doesn't have a lot of confidence, right? That that oh, here's a 600,000, or I'm sorry, $100,000 bill is not going to be $600,000 next month because we don't know.
Yeah.
And you go and ask questions and we don't know.
There's
And
nothing worse
that's
than
not
that.
a place like the
Yeah.
the scariest answer to a CFO is I don't know.
100%. And what's actually scarier to the employee that's saying it, but that's okay. So, so
Sadly, too often the employee is too naive to know this.
well, yeah, they're just up there taking it. So, so I love this. Okay, so there's this. I'm coming up with the title of your new book. I don't quite have it yet. Maybe again, that's another episode because you need to write something about this. This needs to be because there's this combination of FinOps and RevOps. My brain goes to. There's a
Mm,
revenue component to it. There's clearly a business objective, business outcome component to it. There's clearly financial component to it, and then there's this engineering
I
implementation. That's the next wave of FinOps in
look.
your.
It's FinOps plus plus.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with FinOps. Like
No.
I'm pretty hard on FinOps, and not because I think there's something wrong with FinOps. It's because I think people gravitate towards the big obvious stuff, and it's not the obvious where I think the true opportunities are. I think there's
Um,
about if you start a
yeah.
FinOps practice or really just start doing FinOps, right? It's like if you're below a 2,000 person company, you're not going to have a FinOps team. You're going to have people who do FinOps.
Yeah.
You you get about a year of low hanging fruit, and then
Hmm.
after that, it's like you got to be way more intelligent, and that's where I think you really like. That's where the plus plus stuff comes in.
Got you. And okay, we are together on this, brother. I feel you. And I think that's the next wave. I'm serious that the industry needs to write this down. Like there are a set of capabilities in the framework. There's all these things and they're all good. They're all well and good. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of focusing on the business outcome and on the things that you're really trying to accomplish across this portfolio or your company, depending on your stage, that's the next phase of this. What do you think? Okay, so to kind of cap this phase of our conversation, because we're going to have more, like where do you think we're going to be in a couple of years? Do you think there'll be winners and losers in this? Where do you think the best FinOps plus plus teams are going to be? What's going to divide the world, or how's the world going to evolve, in your opinion, in a couple of years?
Um, well, it's interesting because when I talk to people that are like part of the FinOps Foundation, like people who have FinOps practices, they tend to be larger companies,
Yeah,
right? Like you've got to be
sure.
of a certain size to have like
Yeah.
a FinOps team, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think the real opportunity is 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 democratizing this. How do you do this when it's no one's full time job?
Hmm.
Um, no, I think that's where vendors play a big role.
Hmm.
Um, not that the big shops aren't leveraging vendors, but they've got full time staff, vendors
Hmm.
supporting full time staff.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
at least a 2,000 person or less company, they've got people who it's a
couple of
piece of their
people,
job
right?
leveraging that have vendors that
Help them.
and they have these tools that they depend on, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think maybe stepping a bit back, I think with the evolution of AI, let's just talk about agentic coding in general, or specifically. Sorry, I think when I look forward 5 to 10 years, I think the most successful developers are going to be the ones that understand the human experience.
Hmm.
The joke of the developer who could, who can how can you tell who the extroverted engineer is? It's the one that looks at the other engineer's socks. Like that trope is gonna die
Yeah,
because to be successful moving forward, the technology is getting easier and easier and easier. And so understanding how the humans leverage the technology is going to become more and more and more and more important. I mean, it
absolutely.
already was, but we're just
Now it's on
leapfrogging that,
steroids.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, like if I was talking to a young person that was interested in becoming a developer, I would say get a psychology degree.
Yeah, understand the people you're writing
Understand the
for.
people because and minor in computer science, you need to
Yeah,
understand technology. But like that's the easy part. Understanding how the humans will leverage the technology is going to be the hard part.
agreed.
And I think that's kind of the same message in general is focus not on the technology of FinOps. Focus on the business, the the whole picture, and and the incentive structures, the how we're I
Hmm.
often hear, yeah, we go and talk to this team and we say we need to hit these targets, and they say we're busy with other stuff. And I always say, were they?
Hmm.
Like,
Right.
because they were, right? And
Yeah.
too often with people who are tasked with this stuff, they're just like, yeah, no one will listen to it. I'm like, yeah, because every single day they've got a full-time job of delivering something else, and it's not your OpEx reduction.
Yeah. And you
You've
should
got to
understand.
be embedded into the whole framework here, right?
Love that.
I
Okay.
like you guys bought Spot,
We did.
and I think it's a great example of uh, you bring in Spot, you run everything on Spot instances. Okay, so first of all, now your compute's 10 cents on the dollar. That's a let me
Pretty
tell
good
you,
deal. Well, it's not always on
fast.
spot instances, but you want to take advantage of them. Yeah, for
I ran
sure.
100% on Spot for 8 years.
Did you really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's another conversation. All right, cool. All
All
right.
right, add it to the list. Um, so first of all, easiest procurement exercise you ever go through.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, we're gonna spend X, but we'll save Y, Y
yeah.
times 12 or whatever it is. Um, bad math there. Um, but you also end up with a better engineering team because now you got ephemeral compute, and so they
Hmm.
stop like you you weed out a lot of bugs really fast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a
They're
really
right.
great there's an example of a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario.
Gotcha. Yeah.
What I want someone to build is um, a database query optimizer that has a focus on FinOps, but also user experience.
Hmm.
Engineering teams are getting pounded on user experience. FinOps wants to reduce OpEx. Their finance is pushing on them to reduce OpEx.
Yeah.
Win-win.
How do we bring those together?
Let's go find the worst queries out there. I bet you, 80/20 rule here. 20% of our queries are producing 80%. Like a small number of queries could significantly reduce our database load, which would reduce our OpEx, which would improve the user experience.
Win-win.
Boom.
And that never happens unless you collaborate across the lines. You got to reach
Yes.
across it. Got to do
Yes.
it. Got to think of the whole thing. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to wind us down. This is fascinating. I love your point of view on this. I think your point of view is right on target and disruptive. So let's come back together at some point. We have a lot to talk about. Let's see how it evolves, right? Let's see how it moves. And I do think it's worth writing down. I think it's worth, getting it out there, getting this point of view. We don't hear this that much in the industry, and I think you're right on target. As an engineer at heart, having an engineering degree and practicing over the years, I think you're right on. It begins and ends with the engineers and understanding what they look like and working with them. Any last words? Any last thoughts?
You write the book, and I'll put my name on the front.
Okay, deal, deal. I've got lots of ideas. Steve, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Always do. And good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
See you, man.